For this Idaho Legislative debate. On behalf of our school, we're grateful to welcome the candidates, our community members, and everyone who helped make this event possible. We want to give special thanks to Nate Eaton, news director at eastidahonews.com, for serving as our moderator this evening. We appreciate East Idaho News and its commitment to keeping our region informed and engaged in local issues. We're also thankful for the Idaho Falls Chamber of Commerce and the Bonneville County Republican Central Committee, as well as the chamber members who took the time to submit thoughtful questions. Your involvement helps ensure tonight's discussion reflects the real concerns of our community. As students, we value opportunities like this. Civic engagement doesn't begin after graduation. It starts now, by listening, learning, and participating respectfully in the democratic process. Thank you to the candidates for being here and for your willingness to serve. And thank you all for supporting civil dialogue and informed debate.
Thank you, Grace, and welcome to all of you. We are glad you're here with us. We are live streaming right now on eastidahonews.com, and we welcome our first of three groups of candidates who will be here tonight. Let me explain how the format's going to work. For 30 minutes, we will chat with Mike Veely and Chad Christensen, Legislative District 35A. We'll then take a 10-minute break, and then we will hear from Marco Erickson and Jeline Berger, and following that, that's Legislative District 33B. We will hear around 7:20, we'll start the conversation in Legislative District 33A, Barbara Ehart and Connor Cook. Each candidate will get 2 minutes for an opening statement, and then we will proceed with questions. You have 90 seconds to answer each question. If your opponent, if your name is said while your opponent's speaking, we'll give you a chance to do a 30-second rebuttal if you wish. The same question will be asked to each candidate each time. And then at the end of our time, you will get 2 minutes each for a closing statement. We have some Compass students down here who have a timer. You want to hold up the timer so the candidates can see. That will count down for you. When it gets down to your time to stop talking, it will beep like an alarm clock. All right, with that, I've put both of your names here on this random generator to determine who will go first. And it looks like the arrow's right over here. It will be Mike. So Mike Veely, if you want to start off with your 2-minute opening statement.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Mike Veely. I'm the District 35 state representative. I'm out of Soda Springs. I got into this position last year, and it was a fabulous experience. We really enjoyed it, my wife and I. It was a brilliant experience, and it was a tremendous honor to serve the constituents of District 35. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Rexburg. After that, I went down to Utah State. I have a bachelor's and master's degree in mechanical engineering. While I was down there, I met this woman, and we've got 31 years together, 4 children and a granddaughter. You know, we headed to Salt Lake after that, working down there, but we wanted to get back to Idaho. So we got back to Idaho in 1998, where I have worked in phosphorus down in Soda Springs. I worked there until about a year ago, so I had 27 years in that industry, and now I have my own engineering business. One other thing about engineering is I love solving problems, and that's the approach that I took in the legislature, working with people, trying to get different groups together and get a solution, and that's what we worked on. My highest priority is education. Education is our future, and I am very interested on moving education to that next step, taking our public education, innovating it, figuring out how we can solve some of our challenges around special needs and behavioral issues. Public lands. We live in Idaho for our public lands. Our public lands need to remain public. They need to remain ours, and we need to be able to enjoy them. Another thing that we have in District 35 is water issues. District 35 is the nexus for the water issues that we have in the state. We have the Teton, the Bear River, the Portneuf, and the Snake River. There is a huge issue that needs to be dealt there and a solution that needs to be had, and I'm for solving that problem. And lastly, local control. I want to make sure that we are not pushing unfunded mandates down to our cities and our counties and our school districts and our sheriffs. We need to make sure we have local control. Government closest to the people governs best. I want to continue to do that, and I ask for your ability to serve you into the future doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen.
Hi, I'm Chad Christensen. I grew up here in Idaho Falls. I went to Rice College, and I went on LDS mission to San Diego, and came back and finished ISU in political science. Crazy, huh? You know, I served for 2 terms in the House, and I enjoyed that thoroughly. I told my constituents when I ran for office that I would stand on the Constitution, freedom, limited government, free market, And I went to Boise and did just that. I did what I said I was going to do. I had integrity. I didn't campaign over here as a conservative and go to Boise and do the opposite like so many do. I love this state. You know, I love the outdoors. I love to hunt and fish, dirt bike and snowmobile. I have 2 boys of my own. Ryan, he's over there in the dark, I think, and your Lionel's over here, just so you know. Ryan's a hardworking kid. He bought a house at 21 years old. Very proud of him. Very hard worker, and I think I helped instill some of that work ethic. I hope to believe that. My other son, Cooper, got an academic scholarship at ISU. Very proud of him for that. Then I inherited 5 step-kids when I married Lana about 3.5 years ago. Great kids. One's on a mission to South Carolina, and will be home in about 5 months. And another stepdaughter just made the BSU cheer team. So we're very proud of her for doing that. All great athletes in that family, and just awesome. You know, when I was in Boise, you know, I was very outspoken against COVID mandates. You know, I stood up for that, for God-given rights, you know, and against, you know, shutting down businesses and churches. I took action with bills. You know, I stood up behind the scenes with the Health and Welfare Director, Dave Jepson, when he put up the online tattletale form for your neighbor or a business. I called him and told him directly, this is not right. Take it down, and he did so.
Thank you. All right, first question for both of you. Do you think there are areas of wasteful spending in the state? And if you had a magic wand right now and could cut 2 or 3 of them, what would you cut? Mr. Christensen, we'll start with you.
Oh, absolutely. There's wasteful spending. You know, I've said many times that we should just fund the essentials: roads, bridges, schools, fire, police, National Guard, and small hospitals need help too. Other than that, I don't believe in funding much more than that. There is wasteful spending. For example, I've mentioned this many times recently. Health and Welfare has funded gay pride parades. Very inappropriate for our taxpayers to fund something like that. I also know that you know, how many social programs should not be funded. Commission of Arts, anything that you know, competes with private industry is a problem. Public radio, public TV, and I do believe our school administration is too top-heavy. You know, and that should be spent on our kids, not, you know, the State Department of Education doesn't need to be around. Our districts can handle that on their own and spend that money on our kids in public schools and other avenues of schooling. So those things I do believe in cutting and put towards our essentials.
Thank you. Mr. Veely.
You know, here in the state, we have a pretty hawkish legislature that is pretty good at going after those things. They've got a lot of programs out there. You know, they implemented a brand new fraud unit and investigation system with the Department of Health and Welfare that Juliette Sharon has really been implementing and going after things like welfare fraud and the Idaho child care programs. Done a pretty good job of going after those things. Areas that I think we could do better is getting our dollars to go further. Sometimes we spend money on too many different individual things. We have money in our DEQ that goes out for things like water and wastewater systems. We have so many different little systems out there that we have to go and fund. If we put those together, we could possibly get our dollars to go further. We could get more solutions out there. Education that way as well. We have so many small districts out there. We're trying to get special needs students, and we can't, special needs teachers and professionals in there. We can't get those people to every district because it's too expensive for a district. We have some ideas about doing regional service centers. Maybe you take a regional service center and have professional special needs teachers in that service center that goes out there and services multiple districts. That's a way to save money. That's a way to get our dollars to go further. So I think there's some options around there on getting our dollars to go further.
Next question, Mr. Veely. What do you think is the appropriate role of the state in regulating business?
So certainly regulating business, we need to make sure that we're not violating any rights and that we have fair competition. I think that's a role, and we need to make sure that they're doing what is correct. I don't think that businesses should be allowed to go out there and do anything fraudulent. Okay, we have businesses that might not be on the up and up all the time. So we need to make sure that we're not doing anything fraudulent with businesses. We want to stay out of the way of businesses as much as possible. We want to give them that ability to do what they want to do. And there's elements that we can support businesses with workforce development, making sure that we have people that are educated to go out there and support them. But again, I'm more interested in going after anything that has to be fraudulent, but give them that ability to innovate, give them that ability to try something new and get out of their way. I have seen and I've worked in some very large industries that are very challenged with regulations. These regulations that come in over the top of us, and it costs a lot of money. It costs so much money that you end up driving those businesses out. And where do they go? They go outside of the United States. And so you're having to bring these products in, and you've lost that economy in your state. I can give you highlights of where that's happened in Soda Springs. We've lost those jobs because we had too much regulation over the top of them from environmental or what so have you. So I'm very concerned about elements like that.
Mr. Christensen.
Yeah, I'm very pro free market, very much of the party platform. And I think when the government gets involved with the free market and at all, it dampers it and puts a burden on it. The less government regulation as possible is more beneficial to the free market and small business. And I think the government should protect business owners' rights. That's the first and foremost thing the government should do if they do interfere with business. During COVID, that did not happen. The exact opposite happened, closing business doors small business doors when they kept, and the government allowed big corporations to stay open. Big issue for me. And I fought against that, and I fought for businesses when that happened. I was very vocal about it, and I told many businesses, stay open, I'll have your back. And I drove to Preston. I drove to Malad. I drove all over the district when I was in office, and I stood by those people and their rights, and I'll do it again. That's who I am. I'm here to protect your rights. Business owners, individual rights, it's all the same to me.
Mr. Christensen, should public schools incorporate religious or faith-based elements like prayer or Bible passages, or should public education remain secular?
I believe that if the children want to participate, they have that right to do so. That's their First Amendment right to participate in that. If the children don't want to participate, they're allowed to. They should be able to leave the classroom or have some free time during that period, that moment, and a moment of silence or prayer. But I do think that's their First Amendment right in a public setting to exercise prayer and their faith when appropriate. That time is set forth for them.
Mr. Bealey?
Here in Eastern Idaho, we have a pretty good model for that. Okay, we've had that model here in East Idaho ever since I was a child. You have that ability. They have release time for school where people can attend, seminary and certain religious elements there. So we have that model. That gives us that opportunity right now to pursue that. And I think that that's a great freedom that we have. Protecting our religious freedom, we need to make sure that we don't impose it on people, because once you impose it on them, then that gives people the desire to attack it. So I think schools should stay secular. I think that you should have the opportunity to participate in some of these release time opportunities that we have. I think we've had a really good balance of that here in Eastern Idaho, and it serves both functions very well.
Mr. Bealey, House Bill 561 just passed. It sets a civil penalty of $2,000 per day on government entities that fly flags other than those that the legislature says are appropriate. Should the legislature be dictating what flags local cities can and can't fly?
So I look at that as an example of extremism. And what happened is we had extremism from the standpoint that this came out of Boise, that the mayor of Boise was, for lack of a better term, poking the eye of the legislature, okay? And just kept poking and poking. And as you do that, extremism sometimes begets extremism. And when you're doing that, it upsets a lot of people, and we end up having these regulations that come down to try and prevent that. On one hand, we can look at that local control, but if that local control goes too far in someone else's realm, I looked at that and I supported that bill just from the standpoint that I felt like it was going too far, that was being a little too extreme. And so trying to keep a little bit of lack of partisan and basically going in the wrong direction that way from being extreme. That's why I supported that bill.
Mr. Christensen?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that government should be involved in social programs. I mentioned health and welfare has funded gay pride parades in the past and very inappropriate, and that's no different with the Boise situation. Mayor McLean has used taxpayer dollars to fund that agenda, put up a flag, and that was taken away. She put up all this decoration. How many tax dollars have been wasted on that? It's very inappropriate. Government needs to stay out of social programs. It needs to do the essentials, like I mentioned: fire, police, roads, bridges, so forth, and that's it. Stay out of social agendas. Stay out of personal opinion, and that's not your place. Your place is to govern appropriately and stay out of these agendas.
Mr. Christensen, do you support policies allowing undocumented immigrants without criminal records to remain and work in Idaho, or should stricter enforcement be implemented?
So I support enforcement of illegal aliens that don't have criminal records. Is that
Right.
Yes, I do. I in the past I worked for the Welfare Fraud Unit in Idaho, and I helped these ICE officers all the time find these illegal aliens. Very aggressive enforcement for the ones that aren't criminals. No, I don't believe in that, and very aggressive enforcement. I do believe we need aggressive enforcement for the criminal aspect of those illegal aliens. That's very important. I've seen all kinds of criminals come through the system, working in probation and parole and welfare fraud. I've seen some egregious cases with pedophiles and all kinds of these criminal aliens that have devastated our community. And it's very unfortunate, very sad. So I do support that aggressive enforcement on these criminal aliens. As far as just illegals, if they're happened upon through being pulled over by the police or a farm raid or so forth, that's they're here illegally and they should be taken away.
Mr. Veely?
So when it comes to illegal immigration, I look at it as three aspects. That number one, we need to stop digging the hole and make sure our borders stay secure. I think we've proved that is something that can happen because we have that in place now. We can implement systems and develop effective systems going forward that we are not hiring people that are not legal to work here. The third element is dealing with some of those people that are here illegally. We have industries in Idaho right now that are dependent upon them. For example, Idaho is like the third largest dairy state in the country. And if we were to go out there and eliminate those people, we'd have to go and shoot 500,000 cows tomorrow. $3 billion of economy would dry up. I believe it is the federal government's responsibility to develop a system, a guest worker system, that we now can have appropriate ways to deal with this issue. We need a policy that deals with those guest workers. So those guest workers, that policy needs to come from the federal government. It is not the state's responsibility, nor does the state have the ability to enforce it. The federal government needs to do that. Now, when people that are illegal get caught up in this, yes, some of them are going to be sent home. And that might be unfortunate, but that is still the policy that we have, and those things can happen. I would like the federal government to solve this problem, to keep some of our critical industries that are dependent upon them whole.
Mr. Veely, what do you believe is the state's responsibility in funding and maintaining water infrastructure?
So our water infrastructure, this is an investment in our future. And if you think about investments, people talk about, what are we doing for our children's future? Let's invest in it. Let's invest in it now. This is a problem that we have. We're going to run out of water this year. We're going to see curtailments this year, okay? We need to develop our storage. We need to develop our recharge. We need to develop new irrigation methods. And what is the state's responsibility in it? We need to start now funding the feasibility studies, going out there and developing the partnerships. This is going to take decades to solve this problem. This problem will take decades, but we need to start right now funding it. It is an investment that will pay us back. Okay, this investment pays us back from the standpoint, it grows our economy, it grows our agriculture, it grows our industry, and what happens is it pays us back. So if we're worried about our children's future, now's the time to invest in the number one problem that we have here in the state and here in District 35, which is water. There's basically 5 reservoirs that are potentially planned to go in the upper Snake River area. We're looking at raising dams. We're looking at coming up with new ways to do our irrigation that provides us recharge. Now's the time to do it, because it's going to take decades to do it. And I certainly think that we need to start funding that as a state, as a critical infrastructure and investment opportunity.
Mr. Christensen?
Yeah, so when I was in office, I co-sponsored the Bear River adjudication bill that supports protecting rights in that area, lower area, Franklin County, Bear Lake, Oneida County. So I'm very on board with protecting water rights for each farmer, each individual that has water rights. Very important to me. I also think we need to do something about the situation in Twin Falls. We talk a lot about doing these things, but something needs to be done down there. They take the water first because they have the rights earlier on in history, but they're not very efficient. So we need to deal with that with their water down there, and we need to revamp the system down there so we have more water up here in this eastern Idaho area. So water rights are very important to me, and I'm very pro-dam. Rebuilding the Teton Dam is very important. I think we can do that again the right way, and to help our farmers and agriculture I'm very on board with that. When I was in office, I got the Farm Bureau Friend of Agriculture Award. I was very happy to receive that. I'm very pro-farmer, pro-agriculture, and pro-water for them. It's also important to have water for our personal use, for our own property, and all of us have those rights if you have the water rights. I do on my own land. That was important to me to make sure I had that.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen, affordable housing is one of the top concerns for people across the state. What specific policies would you prioritize to increase housing availability and affordability?
The government can't do a whole lot in the free market system, or at least I don't want the government to. It needs to stay out of it. We can't support deregulation and less taxation on our citizens to help the free market thrive. There's certain policies can hurt that market very much, and we need to deregulate a lot of things, and property tax is an issue here as well. I think that hurts our housing industry by quite a bit. If we lessen our property taxes, that will help out the situation as well, I think.
Mr. Veely?
So this is always a conundrum, isn't it? We sit there and want to give people the freedom to do what they want. The state could come in and possibly push localities to change their planning and zoning and things like that. And there were a number of bills like that this year. I opposed many of those bills because, again, that local control. What do you want in your community? I can encourage communities, and if we really want that affordability, then we need to reduce some of those regulations around that. We need to give the people the ability to do some of that developing. In Soda Springs and Caribou County there for a while, they had it basically that you could not divide up anything less than like a 40-acre parcel. That stops a lot of growth. Now, eventually, local people were able to convince the county commission to change that after a while. It is up to our local people to decide that these rules and regulations that are over the top of us, are they too burdensome? And do you want that affordability? Do you want that ability for housing to thrive and grow? We need to take away those barriers. Now, those barriers, again, I do believe they are a local control barrier, and that has to be up to the decision of the people. So that's how I like to leave that up to local control and encourage, on a local level, to provide that freedom for that growth.
Mr. Veely, Idaho is projected to receive approximately $186 million annually in federal funds for the next 5 years to support rural hospitals and providers. Would you recommend the state take the money, and how would you prioritize the use of the funds, particularly given that some of these hospitals are at risk of closing?
So Idaho already has the money, okay? It is already here. I do recommend taking it because it is here. And if we were to not take it, it would make no difference from a federal deficit. It would just go somewhere else, okay? So we have it. It's here. Let's use it. District 35 has 3 rural hospitals. We have Caribou, Bear Lake, and Teton. Teton, that hospital almost shut down last year. Okay, they had to lay off 20% of their people. They're having some struggles. This money that's coming in over the next 5 years is the rural health transformation funding that is for rural health. Now, we need to make sure that is funding the rural districts and the rural hospitals that we have out there. It has sideboards on it. Okay, the federal government has provided sideboards on how you can spend this money. It has to do with health, it has to do with technology upgrades, it has to do with prevention and care, preventive care and things like that. But we have that, so let's use it, and let's use it in our rural health areas. This needs to be decided by people, by legislators that are in the rural health areas. One thing I'm concerned with is it could end up in Ada County. We need it in our counties in District 35, and we need to make sure that we have the voice out there to do that. There'll be 4 people on the House, 4 people on the Senate that is going to get together to decide how that's funded. We need to make sure a District 35 representative, because we have a couple really good ones, that when Representative Wheeler and Senator Harris, they need to be on that committee because they know how to allocate it.
Mr. Christensen?
Yeah, when I was in office, I supported all our small hospitals, Malad, Franklin County, Oneida, and Teton, and Caribou, of course. Very important to me. I mentioned that earlier. That's an essential function that we need to support these small hospitals. Very important to me. As far as federal money goes, I'm always very leery about taking federal money. I always was when I was in office. The ARPA funds, I was against that when we received those in the state of Idaho. There's always strings attached to federal dollars, always. So I'd have to look at that money and see what strings were attached, what circumstances come with that money. I want our small hospitals to thrive and survive. That's important, but not at the cost of other freedoms and other rights for Idaho citizens. So that's not a yes or no question for me. I have to look at the funds and what's attached to them. Like I said, federal dollars can be scary, and an issue with federal dollars too is we get used to that federal money coming in and supports a program for so long, and all of a sudden it's taken away, and we can't retain that program like we want to. For example, Medicaid expansion is one of those issues. When that came through, when I was in office, I spoke on the floor saying, hey, federal dollars are supporting us now, but what happens when those dollars are taken away from us? And we see it now. We have a deficit because of that. So those federal dollars are always a very touchy situation for me.
Thank you. Well, I have so many more topics I'd love to ask you about, but our time is up. So before we go, we'll give each of you 2 minutes for a closing statement. Mr. Christensen, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, I just appreciate being here, talking to, doing this with, going around the district. And, this district's a very big district, and it's very hard to campaign. I appreciate the people here in District 35, Bear Lake, Caribou, Bannock, Teton, the slice of Bonneville, all good people. I've gone door to door, met great people, very good, patriots, that I have loved to get to know. And, that's who I believe I am. I'm a true patriot. I believe in freedom, the Constitution, God-given rights, of course, as I mentioned. That's what I'll fight for if I get back in office again. I'm very passionate about those things. I've been accused of being a grandstander in the past because of my passion. I'm not a grandstander. I'm a very reserved guy, actually. My wife could tell you that. I just get very passionate about those things because I believe it's a spiritual calling to stand up for those rights that God gave us. I have 2 agendas in office again. If I get in office again, one is welfare fraud. I used to be an investigator, like I mentioned. The welfare fraud unit, I'm not sure what he was talking about there, but the recipient fraud unit was taken away a few years ago, and I plan on bringing that back to the AG's office. It's a big issue in the state. There's a big issue in Minnesota, obviously, with child care. So we need to bring that unit back. I dealt with food stamp fraud, Medicaid fraud, child care, recipient fraud, and the provider fraud, cash benefit fraud, and it was rampant. The fraud was rampant when I was in that position. That was about 15, 18 years ago, and I guarantee today it's overwhelming. I guarantee it. So, something else I want to do is to take away the rider and probation option for judges for certain sexual convictions for child crimes, child convictions of these sexual crimes. That's very important to me.
Thank you. Mr. Veely.
So in the legislature this year, I like working with people. I like trying to drive solutions. I had 6 bills that I worked on. I carried 5 of them on the floor, but I was a sponsor on 5 of them, or 6 of them, and I actually negotiated 3 of them. I love that part of the legislature. I love the negotiation part. I love getting in there and trying to figure out how do we get a bill across the finish line where it serves people. One of the bills I worked on, a large load electricity bill. That means if data centers move into the state, that their infrastructure to bring them power can't be socialized to ratepayers. When I walked in there to start working on that bill, I worked on that with Representative Mickelson and Representative Garner. There was a lot of people, a lot of opposition to it, but we negotiated and we worked on that for a number of weeks, and finally we got that across there and everybody was on board. I enjoyed that immensely. I love getting those solutions. I worked on some education bills that were similar that way. We had a strategic planning bill for districts. Again, negotiating that, working with the different people. I worked on that with the superintendents of this district, particularly District 93 Superintendent, Dr. Wollstonhume, working with Debbie Critchfield's office, going back and forth after a couple weeks, and we got everybody on board and got that one across. We had another one on providing financial autonomy for districts and public charter schools. We got that one pushed across through negotiating and making some things happen. I like working on bills that solve problems. I like working on bills that work for us. We passed a bill to put a civics seal now when kids graduate. You can get a seal when you graduate from high school that shows that you excelled in civics. Civics is something that we need. We need more interest in civics. I love working on bills that some people might consider boring, but they're great bills because they fix your everyday life. And I asked your permission to go back and work on that for you. I asked for your permission to serve again next year and help you work on some of those bills to make your lives easier. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Mike Veely and Chad Christensen. They are running for Legislative District Seat 35A. Thank you both, gentlemen, for being here. We're going to take a 10-minute break and be back with another debate. Get started here. For those of you joining online, we welcome you if you are just tuning in to our candidate debates coming to you live from Compass Academy in Idaho Falls. We are now going to meet the candidates running for Legislative District 33B, Marco Erickson and Jeline Berger. They are here tonight. Welcome to both of you. We have a live studio auditorium audience here with us. A reminder of how the rules will be: you'll each get 2 minutes for opening statements, followed by questions. You will each get the same question, and we'll rotate back and forth who goes first. And after 30 minutes of questions, you'll each get 2 minutes for a closing statement. There is a clock right here that our Compass students are dutifully keeping track on our time, so if you can please respect that. And we are determining who goes first with our random spin wheel generator. I put both of your names here on this spinning wheel, so let's see where the arrow lands. It looks like it's Marco Erickson. Mr. Erickson, if you want to start with your opening statement.
Thank you for having me tonight. I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone that comes out to these things. I know politics can be the toughest thing to work with sometimes, but I got involved in public service when I was 10 years old. 10 years old, I just fell in love with the fact that I can help other people in my community, and I saw the impact it made just from simple things like cleaning the neighborhood and planting flowers with a group of people and going and marching in parades for drug prevention. And I fell in love with that to the point where I just pursued that my entire life. It's been who I've been all along. And with that, you learn along the path that the kinder you are to people and the more civil you are, the better your outcomes are. So as a person who's a public servant, I've served in many, many, many capacities. I currently serve on many boards, many committees. I've been elected from my peers in 13 Western states to be a part of the Western States for Education and Workforce Development Policy. I'm very honored that they chose me to do that. And that's a thing I didn't expect, but I'm often put into leadership roles because I'm just a natural leader, and I listen to people, and I care what they think, and I have their feedback in mind at all times. And I'm civil. I'm going to listen to them, and I'm going to hear people out, but I'm not going to attack others around me and not use that skill for bad in any way. So when there's a political debate or something, you'll see me just focus on what I can do to serve you the best. That's always what I try to do, because it's just so much easier to be kind and respectful. It's taken me a long ways in the political piece. I've been able to pass a lot of legislation. Every single bill I've ever brought forward has made it through the House and the Senate and gone forward and become law, because I work really hard on those processes and I'm good at what I do. And most of them, I have this really unique record in the legislature, which is most of my bills pass with the full amount of the body on both sides. And I love that statistic, and every year I kind of try to make it better and better and keep that going. So I appreciate your vote and support.
Thank you. Ms. Berger.
Well, thank you very much, Nate, for hosting this debate. I was born in Provo when my folks were going to school there. My dad graduated from the university, or from Utah State, with his master's, and then we traveled all around the United States for his employment. I lived in Arizona as a young kid. I went to grade school in Texas. I went to high school in Madison, Wisconsin. And then when I was in college, my folks were in Washington, D.C., so I worked 3 summers as an aide and a typist and stenographer for the Internal Revenue Service for 1 summer and the State Department for 2 summers. And so I got a little bit of a chance to see how government works in Washington, D.C. It made me very interested. When I went to college, I found an author, W. Cleon Skousen, who wrote The 5,000-Year Leap, which showed the correct principles of liberty, which were able to, in our country, to create a prosperous nation in 200 years, where we hadn't made much progress in the previous 5,000 years. So he calls it the 5,000-year leap. And in it, he lists the 28 principles of liberty that he discovered when he said, as a youth, I didn't find that they were teaching me the principles of liberty in school, so I discovered them and wrote a book about them. And I'd just like to read a couple of them. There's without religion, the government of a free people cannot be maintained. The proper role of government is to protect equal rights and not to provide equal things like that. When I was at BYU, I met my husband, David Berger, and while he was alive, we were a double burger. We had a couple of small fries, which are now large fries. They have their own kids. I have 10 grandchildren. I feel like I have been drawn to run for this position. I fell in love with the principles of liberty that Dr. Skousen taught, and I feel like that as a community and a nation, we need to follow correct principles, and that's the way we should vote.
Thank you. First question tonight for both of you is about education. Ms. Berger, we'll start with you. K through 12 public school funding continues to be a key issue of debate in Idaho. Do you believe current state funding levels are adequate, or is the state underfunding or overfunding education?
Well, I think that that public school is important, and I think that it's about right now because of the fact that I think that there's a lot of waste in public education. When I was an elementary education teacher, I taught second grade for about 5 years at Ethel Boys Hawthorne. Let's see, did I teach at Erickson? No, I don't think so. Hawthorne. Anyway, Bush, that's the one. I saw that there was a lot of, in the curriculum, that things that I didn't agree with. They were teaching the beginnings of diversity, equity, and inclusion in those times, and the importance of SEL. I felt like that there was an emphasis on those rather than emphasizing the 3 R's, the reading, writing, and arithmetic. So if they would quit spending money on curriculum like that I don't agree with, that other people don't agree with, I think that we'd be just about fine with the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Erickson.
I think as long as I have kids going to Skyline High School and they have to stop going to school for 4 or 5 days, that we are underfunding and it's inadequate in our state. When our local high school, Idaho Falls High School, has a similar problem, they're cramming kids into spaces that are just too crowded and it's not up to par. We're underfunding those schools. Sure, there's things that could be cut and changed, but ultimately, we need to do a better job at taking care of our teachers and funding public education to the fullest. I'm a big fan of reviewing curriculum, but one of the things we do is we tie people's hands in the legislature and we make them follow a specific set of rules rather than letting them be innovative, and when we give them a flat set of funding, let them move pots around. I debated against that a couple years ago when they were trying to say you have to spend it exactly how we allocate it and no change, and I let them know that doesn't work that way. In any federal grant, any federal program, you're allowed to move funds by around 10% on a regular basis. If a bus breaks down, you need to have flexibility. If your facility's broken in your air conditioning systems, you need to be able to fix that quickly. And we don't always allow that, and that's unfortunate. So the funding formulas need to be focused specifically on student enrollment, not on how long a person's sitting in that seat that week. I remember my kids went to Skyline High School, and they weren't always there every time. We'd go on family vacations and trips, and they'd get counted absent, and I didn't want the school to lose money over that. But anyway, just so you know, I support giving the schools much more funding and taking good care of them.
Mr. Erickson, Senate Bill 1352 passed this session. Governor Little signed it into law. It forces cities to amend their comprehensive plans and allow tiny home subdivisions in all residential zones in every city with a population greater than 10,000. Do you support this idea or believe it's state overreach of local control?
I don't even remember how I voted on that, but I do think that is somewhat of an overreach on the state. The city annexes spaces for a reason. I don't mind if it was my backyard. I would love to be able to build a dwelling unit for my kid to be in there as an apartment. So I think that's part of the property right if you want to do that, but you shouldn't force them to do that and mix them together. You'll go to other cities across the country, like in Nashville. I've traveled there and I see that you'll see a very large home, and then in the same neighborhood you'll see a very small home. They just do things a little different. In Idaho, they have a plan of how they're going to implement that. Local control is always the best, and I just appreciate keeping local control as much as possible.
Ms. Berger?
Could you repeat it so I can get the full question
Sure.
again?
It's Senate Bill 1352. It forces cities to amend their comprehensive plans and allow tiny home subdivisions in residential zones if the city has more than 10,000 people. So do you support that, or do you believe it's state overreach of local control?
Well, I'm a believer in local control. The federal system established a federal government, which was to take care of defending the borders of the whole nation. And then we have the state government, which I'm running for. And that would take care of needs that are not specifically given in the Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and addresses the needs of the whole state. And then we have the municipal, the county, and the city governments, which would take care of everything else. So I really think that it sounds like to me, when the state is forcing, you said you used the word force, right?
Mandating.
If they're forcing municipalities and cities to adhere to those rules, which would be different for every city in the state, I believe that is a little bit of an overreach on the state's part. I probably wouldn't have voted for that.
All right, Ms. Berger, recent tax policies changes have reduced state revenue. How would you propose stabilizing or increasing revenue?
Well, that's an easy one for me, because as the voice of the taxpayer, I'm running to cut spending, and I would repeal a lot of the things that are happening. I would repeal the grocery tax. I don't think that it's morally right to tax things that people have to stay alive, the food. We've done that before, but several times, like when Governor Otter was late in signing that bill, but the Supreme Court gave it to him anyway. We've tried to repeal the grocery tax for a long time, and we still should do that. I'm also a widow because my husband passed away 13 years ago. And so now, with the insurance money, I was able to pay off my house. That's terrific. But as Social Security is in question these days, and who knows what would happen to my retirement income, as I'm on a fixed income now. If I can't pay my property taxes, I'd lose my home. So I am a proponent of going to the legislature and finding ways of cutting spending enough that we wouldn't need to have property taxes. Maybe we would increase the consumption tax a little bit. 1.9% has been one of the things that's been proposed. We could get rid of property taxes, and then those of you who own your own homes and are on fixed incomes wouldn't have to worry about losing your homes if you couldn't pay your property taxes. And so I am a proponent of cutting the spending and the waste. I think that it's obvious that we should pay for things that we need, but not things that we necessarily just want.
Thank you. Mr. Erickson.
Thank you. When I walked into the legislature, there were systems already set up that had been there for years and operating many years before I came in. And I didn't come in with some attitude of a magic wand saying, I'm going to fix this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, because there's a process, and there's a huge process you have to follow. You have to convince a lot of people when you're going to make changes. Those changes are big things that could happen, and it's a great idea to get rid of property tax, but how would we regenerate the revenue that we lose from that? There's great ideas out there. There's some innovations that could be used with our INL that people are talking about that could totally replace that. There's conversations about increasing a sales tax to offset that. I've heard those discussions in the Capitol. I'm not on the taxation committee, and I'm not the tax expert. I get to be involved in those conversations on a regular basis, look at the analysis, see how they affect our people, and really go with what's best for the citizens of Idaho. It's not something I just come in with an idea and say, let's do this and let's go forward and make that magical thing happen. I really wish we could eliminate property tax, because it would be, it's the same thing she said with widows, and our grandmas shouldn't have to worry about paying that tax to stay in their home. So I'm always a fan of expanding those tax write-offs for those elderly people so that they can not have to pay such a large amount when they've been paying that for 50, 60 something years. My grandparents were in their home for 65 years, and they paid a lot of taxes over time. And yeah, so that's kind of like highway robbery. I appreciate that conversation.
Mr. Erickson, many people say the legislature spends too much time and money on hot-button, highly charged legislative issues like bathroom usage, gay marriage, trying to overturn gay marriage. Do you agree, and what would you respond to that criticism?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, because if you take a look at the legislation I work on, there's a reason it gets all 70 votes, and there's a reason that a whole lot of people don't come out in the committee and say, that's a terrible thing, and they come in opposition to my work. Because it's not designed to harm anyone. It's designed to better the state. We heard some of that earlier. When you work and you negotiate and you do the work up front, and it's good work, you don't come in with a wrecking ball mentality and focus on all these social issues that nobody in the community is talking about. They're talking about their economy and how it's harming them and what they need to, better housing and affordability in housing. They care about education for their kids and their families. They care about public safety. There's things like that. And so when I'm working on bills, especially in my expert area of mental health. I really know a lot about that, and I'm able to create and generate ideas, and I create these things called upstream prevention. It's cheaper when we think about it and move it upstream, closer to the problem, and not waiting until it becomes a big problem. And I call that the inverted V in funding. It's a way to save money. For example, if I invest in women's treatment for drug treatment up front, I could keep them out of prisons in a lot better way. And we got to have adequate services and adequate care to take care of those kind of needs. And then we save money on the flip side because we don't have to incarcerate people.
Ms. Berger,
Repeat the question.
do you believe the legislature spends too much time and money on hot-button, highly charged legislation like bathroom usage and trying to overturn gay marriage?
Well, I believe in what John Adams said when he said that our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. And I believe that when government makes legislation, that it needs to follow correct principles, the principles of liberty that Dr. Skousen elucidated in the 5,000-year leap. I also think that government needs to protect its people, and it needs to foster the kinds of legislation that would encourage things like families, the freedom of conscience, and the liberty to worship as you would please. So I believe that there are some things that you might call hot topic issues, but if they are fostering the moral values of a society, then it needs to be in the legislation, it needs to be talked about, it needs to have discussion. Perhaps, with discussion, you can hear both sides. But if a moral and religious people don't stay morally accountable to their founder or their providence, their creator, the society will fall apart. So I do believe that at least the ones you mentioned are important subjects for the legislature.
Thank you. Ms. Berger, how would you address labor shortages in the ag sector?
In the ag sector?
Agriculture, yeah.
I would say that we need to encourage our teenagers to get to work. I see so many teenagers, I have several and my grandchildren, and they're on their screens all the time. And they don't get out, and they may go to ball practice and soccer practice, but they spend so much time on their screens, and that's being shown as being a deleterious effect on their characters and their health even. So I would say that we would need to get our teenagers back to work because of the fact that we are allowing so much illegal immigration to do the jobs. Our teenagers are left out. I would think that we have a lot of able-bodied people who would work if they had the ability to do so. And so we need to encourage our American citizens to do those jobs.
Thank you. Mr. Erickson.
Well, I grew up working on those farms and baling hay and working farms, and that was good work. It paid me like $40 a day back in that day, and it was great money. But the thing is reality is we've got a labor shortage. When you look at the charts and you look at the national trends of the children that are being born today versus my parents' generation and the generation before, we have a serious shortage and we have a serious problem. It's almost to the point where we've got to reform the entire system. One of the things I would innovate, I would say, on the federal level, those changes have to be made. They have to create paths that are smart and useful. One of them I would do would be, I would figure out a way if we can have people serve in our country's military and then take civics courses and pass a civics test, speak English, and care about this country and love it so deeply that they come back here and they fall in love with the reason that the rest of us fell in love with our country. I was lucky enough to be born here. My great-grandparents immigrated from Yugoslavia to avoid the really bad things that were happening there in the early 1900s, and they were farmers. They were beet farmers. And so they had 12 kids, and that's how their labor got handled. They did it, and they made their boys work. Right? My children were raised with a work ethic and hardworking, but we can't always rely on that. The future, there aren't enough people being born. If you look at the charts, the country is very worried about that right now. So we need a new, innovative way to bring them in legally and to help them to migrate here legally in the right way.
Thank you. Mr. Erickson, INL plays a major role in the region's economy and advancing America's energy and national security missions. How would you use your role to champion INL's mission, and what challenges do you foresee?
Well, I hear people all the time. I love that question. The INL is so amazing. It's so important to what we do. We are so innovative in Idaho. There's ways, like I mentioned before, our good Senator Lent and some others have been working on some really cool things that could potentially change the whole future of Idaho and bring in trillions of dollars to our economy in the way that we need. So it's so innovative. Those small modular reactors, the technology that's being worked on out there, there's a good reason for that. Others, the challenge is some people don't think we should have that in Idaho. I love it. I know it's safe. I've been out there. I've visited the site. I've seen and talked to many, many people. It's something we need to continue to support, and there's some who say that, well, it's federal money, it's a federal program, it's not good. No, that's very good for eastern Idaho, and it's going to change. Imagine if it wasn't there, how devastating that would be to our community. We love having that site. We love the innovation that takes place there. I love all the highly educated people that move to our community and bring us extra things. Look at the amazing, like the Mountain America Center and all the great things we have with the Civic Auditorium, all the great things. Our community is growing, but also we're having more fun with that growth too. So we have to accept it, understand it. It's costing more, and we have some growing pains a little bit, but boy, do we love the work that goes on at the INL, and I'm looking forward to the future great things they do as well.
Ms. Berger?
Yes, you're talking about the INL and the reactors there. I'm a proponent of using nuclear energy. I think that some of the other proponents with the green revolution have been found wanting. For instance, I hate to say it, but the wind turbines, you know, if there's no wind, then there's no electricity. Solar is really great. I have a solar generator for times when maybe the power would go out. But if there's no sun, then there's no electricity from that either. I think that we need to expand on the nuclear energy, as it's a great source. I think that they're careful over there. I know several people who work over there. And I think it's an important contribution to our economy and for the state of Idaho. I also think that we ought to not give up on our fossil fuels and our carbon and coal. I know that Germany is starting to put back their coal mines because of the fact that some of the green facilities for electricity generation don't work as well. So I think we need to keep that up. I think INL is an important part of our economy.
Many seniors in the state are worried about cuts to Medicaid. Do you believe that the program provides too many services, just the right amount, or do they need to provide more?
Well, you know, when you look at the proper role of government, several of our founding fathers said that I'll read it from the Declaration of Independence. It says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness with the property." Some people say life, liberty, and property. "Pursue happiness with the property that you own. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed." So it says that the rights that we give to the government, either on a state level or on a federal level, are always to secure our rights. That would be defense on a federal level. That would be having, you know, a prepared Army and Navy defense and protecting our borders. Would be on a state level having good roads so we have the freedom to travel. Would be allowing the media to be free so that we can have freedom of speech. Would be fire and police protection. Those things are the proper role of government. So really, it also says that government gets its rights or its consent from the governed. So as a person, if I can't steal from my neighbor to give a car or a horse or whatever to another neighbor who might need it, I cannot give that right to the government. So the government really does not have authority from the governed, that's us, giving our consent, to take our money, the taxpayers' money, and give it to someone else. So I am not a fan of welfare payments, and I would not have voted for the Medicaid expansion.
Thank you. Mr. Erickson.
Well, I've been in the legislature for the last 6 years, and I've done nothing but protect your ability to have your health care needs met through Medicaid and through Medicaid expansion. That's what our voters in Idaho Falls asked for. That's why I was sent there, and I did that. I protected it year after year, especially people probably have no idea how many hours we've spent having conversations and having to have compromises to keep that stable. when they tried to cut dental care from Idahoans, and simple thing like that. It sounds good on paper because it's not a requirement of the Medicaid program on a federal level. But when they did that, they realized really quick that they cost them more money because they were going to the ER and they were having to get emergencies a lot more, and it cost much more than the $30 million investment. So the legislature quickly reinstated that. That was back in 2012, long before my time. And every year that conversation comes up again. Are we going to cut dental? Are we going to cut? And my answer is no, because it's not good for Idaho. So I'm a scalpel kind of person. We look at alternatives and we figure out how to take care of it, and we analyze the data and we analyze information before we make tough decisions. I don't think we're doing enough for health care for our people. Do you know? And we're not taking care of our providers. We're not paying them enough. That's why they leave Idaho. That's why I left as a provider in mental health in a billing capacity, because it was too difficult and the regulations were too tough. And so it's a really hard time for Medicaid right now, and the U.S. government it's definitely going to bankrupt America if we don't do some innovative changes. I'm an expert in that, and I look forward to continue to do that work in Washington, D.C. as I get called on a regular basis to go down and help consult on that and work with my colleagues across the country to try to make an impact on those programs.
Thank you. Eastern Idaho is primarily made up of groundwater users, whereas central and western Idaho have more surface water users. How would you work to protect eastern Idaho groundwater users and access to the Snake River aquifer?
Well, this is a great question. Last year when 1,000 people showed up at Melaleuca to have that conversation, I was so impressed, because all of our Eastern Idaho delegates do whatever it takes to take care of our water. You heard it earlier. We're looking for innovations and figuring out ways to, we've already voted many times on how to recharge the aquifer and putting millions of dollars into that. But the groundwater and the surface water, people are often fighting, and there's good lawyers working on those agreements on a regular basis. But I'm going to support what the experts are telling me needs to be done in our state. I want to make sure we have water, because if that reason we were in Melaleuca and having that conversation is because that single act of not having enough water to take care of our crops would bankrupt our entire city, and it would cause a massive multi-billion-dollar economic fall. We have to protect that major thing in our city, in our community, our surrounding area. So I would do whatever it takes, and I would support funding. I will support the changes in the regulations if necessary, building dams, making sure that there's some way to store that water. And even right now, our good Senator Cook has worked really hard on that topic. Since it's in good hands, I trust my good colleagues to keep working on that, and then I support them in their efforts, because they spend the time and energy, and they work it with all these amazing partners, really smart people across who know water and know how to work on that, and I'll continue to do that throughout my career in the legislature.
Thank you. Ms. Berger.
Yes, I think that water is, for heaven's sakes, I'm drinking it every 5 minutes here. We've got to protect our water. I think I think that we have water here, but we have had a lot of projects that have been initiated but haven't been completed. One thing I read about the water situation was the fact that some people were encouraging us to build more cement canals, and that would be the delivery of the surface water. However, it wouldn't recharge the aquifer, because if you leave your canals with dirt, then some of the water does go seep back to the aquifer. So yes, we've got to do what we need to do. I would be also a proponent of rebuilding the Teton Dam so that we do have some storage there. I am not a proponent of Mike Simpson's idea to breach the dams in northern Idaho. I think it's really important that we keep the power that's generated from those dams. And yeah, we really do need to do some research and find out what, it seems like some people are thinking that there's a management problem rather than a supply problem. Although this last winter was so dry, I don't know if that's the truth or not. But yes, I would be a proponent of water storage and doing what we can to make sure all of our farms and our people have water. You can't survive without water.
All righty, well, it's time. Oh, go ahead.
Never mind, I think I used
You have
up my
2
time.
seconds.
2 seconds? I wanted to add a comment about my belief in Medicaid. I think that
Why don't we
should
hold
be
that for our closing statements
okay.
right now,
All
because
right.
we're
Sure.
tight on time. So you
Thanks.
each have 2 minutes for your closing statements. Marco Erickson, if you want to start.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My leadership skills have shown, and I have had the reputation. That's why I get chosen to be in leadership in the legislature. It didn't take me long. I was in my second term, and they put me in as vice chair. I probably would have been chairman, but the good gentleman who was the chairman, who had been there 20 years and definitely deserved that over me. But my skill set and my knowledge and the work that I do is highly respected in the legislature. It's really cool to be skilled in a certain area, like juvenile justice and mental health, and to really be able to advocate for my state and the people that I serve every day and have it affect so many people and not even try to take credit for it. Just do a little bit of good every day and see the outcomes, and that's what makes me happy. Getting to serve you and serve in the capacity which I have, make an impact when I find that there's a problem. Just today, somebody called me and they're like, hey, I have been trying to get my doctor credentialed, and I can't figure out why it's taken so long. They've been working on it for months. I made a phone call to the state. Within 2 minutes, I had 2 people call me back, and then now today he got contacted, and they're handling the issue and getting that psychologist or psychiatrist, whatever that doctor was, credentialed so that they can move forward and serve in the public quicker and meeting the needs of the people right here in Idaho Falls. That's the kind of leader I am. I'm just here for you. I don't do this for me. I don't do it because I love politics. I don't do it because I love arguing or fighting or having these polarizing issues. I do it because I love you. I love the people I get to serve every day, and I truly, genuinely, really believe that. It's such a great honor to get to serve with the people I get to every day, and also in the legislature and the people that work with me there. And I just ask for you to continue to support me in that work. Let me continue to improve Idaho and do my best to make an impact for you and your future lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Berger.
I just wanted to make a comment about the Medicaid expansion. I believe that as the voice of the taxpayer, we need to cut spending in the legislature. Fred Birnbaum has said that there's not a revenue problem, there's a spending problem. And since I know that the budget has increased 60% over the last 6 years, and it's increasing every session, that's unsustainable. We cannot keep that kind of spending up. So I'm a proponent of spending money. My opponent here was careful with your taxpayer dollars, only 23.3% of the time. And we've really got to keep ourselves fiscally sound. I believe that as a citizen of the United States and as a citizen of Idaho, we need to take care of our brothers. We are our brothers' keepers. And instead of letting the government give to special interests and to welfare, we should take that responsibility ourselves. I purposely spend money on giving to charities. There's great charities. I give to the Rescue Mission here in town. I give to Pink. I give to the Salvation Army. Of course, I give to my church as well. We need to do better at taking care of our own people. And if we always rely on the government to do it with Medicaid and stuff like that, we're always going to be dependent. I'm a proponent of getting off of the federal dole. If the federal government is $3 trillion in debt, and if that money, if they become accountable and our country goes bankrupt, what does Idaho do when 40% of our budget is supplied by the federal government? And so, as the voice of the taxpayer, I would review that. We have a spending problem. We need to cut the budget. We need to let you have your tax dollars back so that you can spend them where you want. You can give to the charities that you choose. You can be a good neighbor. You can be a good church member. Churches and charities need to take over that role. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Round of applause for Jeline Berger and Marco Erickson. Your candidates for Legislative District 33B, thank you both for being here, and we will be back in about 10 minutes to have our debate with 33A. Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for asking good questions. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Whoops. Oh, can't lose my Declaration of Independence.
Alrighty, everybody, it is 7:20, time for our third and final debate. Welcome to those of you just joining us. We are here at Compass Academy in Idaho Falls, and we have the two candidates running for Legislative District 33A, Barbara Ehart and Connor Cook, with us on stage. A reminder about how this will go. You'll each have 2 minutes for opening statements. The Compass students here have a timer there on the table that you can see that will count down and give you it'll start to beep when your time's up. You'll each get the same question as we proceed. You'll have 90 seconds to answer those questions, and then at the end, you will get 2 minutes for a closing statement. We are streaming live to people all over the world, so welcome. Here is who will go first with our little spin wheel here.
Oh, no.
It looks like it is Connor
Oh, no.
Cook. Okay, you've got 2 minutes,
You
Mr.
timing
Cook.
me already, Nate?
Time starts now.
Awesome. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Connor Cook. I'm running for Legislative District 33A. I just want to start off and say thanks for volunteering your time to come and be informed. And I hope we have a spirited debate tonight, and I hope we learn a lot. I think campaigns are fantastic because you get to learn a lot about yourself, and you get to learn a lot about your state. And I can really speak to that because I've had to learn a lot about myself, and I've quite certainly learned a lot about my state in the last couple of weeks. I'm a 10, almost 11-year firefighter paramedic for the city of Idaho Falls. I spent a year at Station 4. I've spent 8 or 9 years downtown, Station 1, our new station. I have a heart for service. I'm just trying to bring Idaho back to Idaho values, and let's get back right on track. And with that, I'm just super grateful to be here, and I hope we have a good time. Right, Barb? And the rest of my time is yours.
All right,
You're
Ms.
going to
Ehart.
give me an extra minute there? No, I'm kidding. I'll let them reset. It's kind of convenient to have that. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here to listen to us as we share our thoughts and kind of vision as to either that which we've done or where we see Idaho. I'll tell you what, I have absolutely been humbled and honored to serve as your representative these past few years. It has been an amazing experience to represent you in Boise. I've been pretty effective too, and I'm one of those people. I was born and raised in Idaho Falls. I love Idaho. I tell you, spending 15 years of my life coaching Division I women's basketball, living 4 other places, and making that decision to come right back here because I love Idaho, and I want to see us preserve and conserve those things that I had and many of you had growing up, to have the Idaho that we had in the 70s and the 80s, and I think that's pretty important. There have been 5 primary things that I think would define a lot of what I've done with legislation. I have been a families first person. A lot of the legislation I've done has been to protect our families, and that means a lot of parental rights. We need to understand that protecting the family, strengthening the family, only strengthens our communities. Without strong communities, we won't have a strong state. And so that's been something that's been incredibly important to me. It's been important to protect constitutional rights. I've been able to bring legislation to add and teach civics, American civics, patriotic civics going forward in high school. I see that time's running out. I might have to take you up on it. Protecting girls and women in sports, just heard at the Supreme Court, absolutely amazing. Centering and voting on things to absolutely reduce your property taxes, and not just property, all of your taxes. And then finally, let's just say in the 4 seconds, I absolutely support our energy, the INL, hydropower, and all things water. How's that?
Thank you. Thank you very much. First question, Ms. Ehart, we'll start with you. Housing. Affordable housing is one of the top concerns for many of us. The legislature has considered measures to override local zoning rules. Do you support this approach, or should cities retain control?
It's very interesting that this came up at the beginning of the I chair local government, so I am involved in a lot of things that relate to local government and have been a big help. I was approached, as was my counterpart on the Senate, Senator Doug Ricks, and they wanted us to host some presentations on the very thing of which you're speaking, and so we did. That's where we heard some of the thoughts and things they wanted to do. Of course, I had a lot of concerns at that time. I as the chair, I try not to interfere and speak too much, but I did, and ironically, at the end of the session, when that legislation came back, it did not come to my committee where it absolutely should have come. I believe it would have died in my committee. I did not support Senate Bill 1352 for a lot of reasons, but I'll tell you, I go back to strong families. It's all about the missing middle. So you have your strong cornerstone communities, and then they put in a couple of duplexes, and then you end up with these major multi-dense housing projects right next to communities where you have more transient people. I absolutely believe that it is not, we as the state should not have removed the zoning abilities, and I stood on the floor and I spoke to it. It was on a group chat that also included Mayor Sean Coletti. And we absolutely opposed to that. It should have come to my committee, and it did. And when I say my committee, the committee that I am privileged to chair, should have come there. It did not.
Mr. Cook?
Yeah, I think housing is just a hot topic. And why I feel that way is I'm lucky because of timing. I was able to come at the right time. I was able to buy a home. I was able to build a life. And what I see now is I see up-and-coming young families that just simply can't afford to live here anymore. We've got firefighters on the fire department right now that are living with their parents that are struggling to make ends meet, and it is due to a high cost of housing. And I agree, I think we need to keep it as local as we can get it. I personally don't really want someone from, let's say, Chalice or Wallace, Idaho, dictating what's gonna happen in Bonneville County. I think the counties and the cities, I think they know what's best. I think they're tactical in their decision-making, and I think it needs to stay with us. The other thing, and it's unpopular, is we need to trust the market. I think the government needs to stay out of the market. When the housing costs come so high that people can't afford to live here, it will drive costs down. I don't want to see that. I hope it doesn't happen, but I think the less government intervention in housing is most important. I think we need to stay out of it as best we can.
Thank you. There's a ballot initiative campaign underway to legalize cannabis as a treatment option for Idahoans with terminal illnesses or debilitating medical conditions. Do you support legalizing medical marijuana? Mr. Cook?
Sorry, talk fast, Nate. I gotta write this down. Really what would be beneficial for the state of Idaho is if the federal government could come out with some really solid guidelines on this. As long as the federal government says no to marijuana, Idaho's gonna follow suit, and it's gonna stay in line with that. I have a strong belief that we need to follow the federal government's guidelines. I don't think we need to go rogue, and the state of Idaho's proven that. They followed the federal law to the T when it comes to marijuana. Unfortunately, we have to trust our doctors, we have to trust our medicine, and I feel like physicians are able to dictate and they're able to treat people just as well as one might be able to articulate that marijuana does. But as long as the federal government stands objectively negative, I think Idaho should stand objectively negative. If the federal government changes its mind, that opens the door to a conversation. I don't see the federal government going that way anytime soon. And that's really where I stand on it. And speaking to marijuana as a whole, I've had an intimate ability to work on the streets. I'm in a low-income service area. I see street-level narcotics every day. One could articulate that marijuana maybe has its benefits, but from what I've experienced with 8 or 9 years downtown in the lower-income service areas, that truly it is a gateway drug. It can lead people to other negative, higher street-level narcotic usage, and I really don't want to see that because I do see the damage that it does to communities. But I'm going to go back to my original answer. I think the federal government needs to step up and the federal government needs to decide what it wants us to do.
Thank you. Ms. Ehart.
Been pretty consistent on this. Idaho is the last standing state that has not legalized marijuana in one form or another, and I do not support the legalization of marijuana. I do support CBD in those forms, but all we have to do is look to our surrounding states, look to Washington, look to Oregon, look to California, look to Colorado, and the pain and trepidation. People like to presume that you're going to make money. Look at the tax money you're going to make off of that. Look at what you're going to pay for because of what's happened as people get hooked on this drug. And I absolutely would agree with the assessment of Mr. Cook. It is a gateway drug, and Idaho can do better.
Ms. Ehart, you are familiar with House Bill 752. Makes it a misdemeanor for a person to enter a restroom, changing room, locker room, or shower room in government-owned buildings or a place of public accommodation designated for the opposite biological sex. And then there's additional punishments if the perpetrator continues to do the same thing. Many voters have said this was a waste of time and money for a non-issue, and it really can't be enforced. How would you respond?
That's not true at all. So let me walk you through this. If you were to go back, the city of Idaho Falls was one of the cities that passed the anti-discrimination ordinance. And at the time in 2013, it only passed two legs of it, housing and employment. I believe in 2020, under COVID, it passed the public accommodations. And I don't think everybody understood what that meant, but it absolutely meant that men who identify as women then would have the ability to go into women's locker rooms, women's private spaces. And we had 13 cities that passed this, and actually heard in the committee which I chair, local government, was where we heard this legislation, including the testimonies from those in Sandpoint when a man had gone into the locker room with women and naked, et cetera, et cetera. They ended up repealing that. Here's the problem. We have businesses in the city of Idaho Falls who stand up and protect women and children by telling men and maybe members, customers, that no, you cannot go into our restrooms and you cannot use our locker rooms. I know of a particular business that has said that. These businesses, every day they take that stance. They are on the verge, just one lawsuit away from potentially losing their business because of the anti-discrimination ordinances that do allow them, men, to go in there. And so this legislation 100% protects our businesses who are standing up for women and children and protecting their safety and rights.
Thank you. Mr. Cook.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think that at this point, it was initially well-intentioned legislation. I think there was a fear. I think there was concern from the community. My concern is, how did Idaho become the most authoritative state in the country as far as bathroom usage? That's where we have to draw the line. I think enforcement on this is extremely difficult, and I think improving the intent of the crime is going to be extremely difficult. Now, we have to face a certain reality. We're creating laws. Who's going to enforce those laws? I can speak to the call volume on our streets. I can speak to the availability of patrol, both for the city and the county. It is not like there is an officer around the corner that's readily available to respond to this. I think this is going to open us up to lawsuits later on down the road because there's variables. Who's going to decide? Who's going to judge? Who's going to check, right? And that's where I'm very concerned. Like, once again, well-intentioned legislation, but we've slid out of this kind of realm of reality, right? And with that, I think that this legislation is done. If I have to talk about bathrooms one more time, other than when I have to go, I think it'll be too soon in my lifetime. Like, it's impressive how much of this campaign has been wrapped up in that. But I do think it'll be difficult to enforce. It'll be even more difficult to prosecute. I mean, who's going to check? Who's going to be our bathroom monitors? Because it certainly is not going to be law enforcement, because they're already stretched too thin handling calls for service.
Mr. Cook, do you support policies allowing undocumented immigrants without criminal records to remain and work in Idaho? Or should stricter enforcement be implemented?
Oh, this is definitely a touchy subject, right? Because so much of our economy does revolve around agriculture, and sometimes these things happen. What I think the focus is, I think the federal government, once again, needs to handle federal issues. I think the House bill, that's forcing ICE compliance on law enforcement was a gross overreach of state government because, once again, we don't have the availability on patrol to go and handle this. I definitely think the federal government needs to come up with a federal solution. And I think whatever they come up with, Idaho will do the best that we can to work with it because we do need them. There's a certain realities we have to talk about. If we deported everybody who's illegal, we would have no agriculture. Our crops would go unharvested. Our cows would go unmilked, right? So we need to come up with a dynamic solution that involves our partnerships with the federal government, and we need to come up with a collaborative solution. But to purely kick everybody out will wreck Idaho's economy.
Ms. Ehart.
So, we talk about wanting to work with the federal government, and that would just be fine and dandy. The federal government hasn't done anything forever until President Trump got involved. And President Trump, actually, with some of the legislation on immigration that was run this year, it was part of the big, beautiful bill. And starting with 659, that was part of the big, beautiful bill, trying to hook up locals with more of the immigration status that President Trump had, specifically setting aside federal money so that we could get more officers trained and be able to work in conjunction with the federal government. That is exactly how that was set up. But I think there's another, I don't know if we're going to get another immigration question, so let me also point this out, that it's real easy to take this conversation to just agriculture. What we're forgetting, and a lot of the people that I'm representing, that I'm sitting and having meetings with over and over, would be our construction workers. They are frustrated and they're tired. Jobs that used to pay $30 an hour, they can't do it anymore. They're getting underbid with illegal construction businesses. They're losing their people. They can't keep people there to work for jobs that used to be fantastic positions for young men to work, to be able to find a career in, to be able to buy a home. And I think that's why some of these things are important. We can get hyper-focused on agriculture. It permeates so many other jobs, and our good people are losing their jobs because of it.
As a follow-up, Ms. Ehart, how would you address those labor shortages with the construction industry and the ag industry?
Well, with the construction industry, if we can make everybody play by the same rules, then you're going to see construction boom again, because we're going to be able to pay the kind of money that we used to pay in construction. We're going to see young men wanting to work for $25, $30 an hour. You're going to see that again. And that's important. These are good jobs. And as far as agriculture, that probably hasn't been the area in which I've been most focused, because the people with whom we're working right here in the district of 33 have been more related to construction and the service industry, and we're getting to the point where people keep telling us nobody will work those jobs. That's simply not true. And the one other thing that we found out is, or I think some of us knew, but it's been interesting to watch some of our colleagues come to the realization that as they're sitting there, they have business owners coming to them and saying, you know, the way this is all working, people won't come and stay with the job because of the pay, and because they can do something under the table for cheaper. So we need to take back and make work how it was. You know, with some of us are maybe just a tad bit older, where we're working 1, 2, 3, 4 jobs, and you know, we're happy to go out and work. And you know, that's what I would like to see.
Thank you. Mr. Cook.
I think to address the labor shortage, one of the best things we have going on in the state of Idaho is the launch program. And I really think we need to keep launch active. Launch is going to fix that problem. It's going to get kids in the trade field. It's going to get them jobs that pay better because they're educated in their line of work. And once again, it's going to be a great taxing revenue coming back. I can't sing enough praises for the launch program. And once again, the great thing about launch too is it's going to develop workers. They're going to be able to go out to the Idaho National Laboratory. They're going to be able to perform effectively. They're going to make a higher wage, and we're going to have an increased tax income. So I think protecting programs like Launch, I think it's protecting secondary education as well that's going to be really key to that. You know, this year through the budget cuts, collegiate education has suffered. Tuition is rising all across the state. Idaho State University is laying off professors. The College of Eastern Idaho is laying off professors. That's a big warning sign to me. So I think programs like Launch have to stay there. They have to remain effective, because it's going to be one of our best shots to get kids a chance at an education in the trades and to make our state better.
Mr. Cook, can you identify 1 or 2 specific areas of wasteful spending in the state, and 1 or 2 areas that you believe need more funding?
Idaho is truly a lean and efficiently run state. To sit here and say that there is wasteful spending in the state of Idaho, I have not been able to find it. We are efficiently run, we are well organized, and I truly can't point out, outside of a very finite point, where there is waste in this state government. We should be proud of how we're run. The thing that concerns me the most are the cuts to the budget. We're going to need to fund the state. We have a $4 billion revenue decrease. We have a $280 million budget deficit. We had to cut 4% this last legislative year. We have to cut 5% next year. I'm just going to round up, that's 10% of our household budget, and we have to keep acting like we're the Joneses. And that's very scary to me. I think if there was any spot in this state of Idaho where we could maybe cut back a little bit, it's legislator pay. If we're going to ask our state departments to make cuts, we should be willing to bear the same burden we're asking upon our state. And that's about the only place that I can come up with in my mind that we could do budget cuts. I don't feel like if we have a budget cut mindset, we're operating with an optimistic outlook for our future. I think we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that our budget's good and it's solvent and it's heading in the right direction. But if every legislative year we come back and it's cut, 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 what will we have in 10 years? And that's kind of the question I'd like to have on the audience's mind as well.
Ms. Ehart.
Well, first, we haven't been in a cut. We've been in an increase for the past 6 years. The budget has just expanded exponentially because of the ARPA money. Now, some of that ARPA money got put where it probably shouldn't have gotten put, which is some of the departments used it instead of for a one-time project. They started to rely upon it, which was not a great idea, obviously. So this is the first year that we've experienced that. But do you know the budget actually didn't decrease? The budget increased by 2.5%. And so I just need to make sure that we understand that. So with some of the problems that we face, we decided to adopt, and I think it was pretty close to unanimous, Trump's big, beautiful bill. How can we not support the president when he's promised so many people no tax on tips and some of the other things that he promised? But when it comes to where we could cut, and the legislature, the Republican side of it anyway, I think was unanimous in its support, and this is very important. When Medicaid expansion was passed, it was about passing help for the working poor. Somewhere that became those who aren't working, able-bodied men who, and it is primarily men in late 20s through the 30s who aren't working. They need to work, they need to be anxiously engaged, and so had we done that last year instead of waiting to this year, we might have been able to save up to $400 million, and it would have made a big difference in the budget this year, and we're anticipating that this cut will be successful for next year.
You mentioned Medicaid. What's your overall view of the level of services provided by Medicaid in Idaho?
Medicaid needs to make sure that we use it for those for whom it was intended. And that was the concern with the Medicaid expansion. That means children, it means pregnant women, our elderly, and disabled. We have seen that those falling into that category have started to see a reduction in the services and money that they've received. And I absolutely 100% would blame that on Medicaid expansion, especially when it became out of control and it didn't just serve the working poor. Again, as I'd already stated, it started to go to able-bodied men, again in particular, who were choosing not to work. The other problem, as we look at business owners, and we hear quite a bit, a business owner will tell us that one of the problems they run into is they're in the process of hiring, or they've hired somebody, and then that person comes to them and say, hey, I can't work any more than 28 hours or 30, depending on their varying circumstances. They can't work more than X amount of time because that means they won't be able to collect their Medicaid and these handouts and these benefits. And these employers are saying, these are strong people. I told them, just go get a second job if you have to. With a few extra hours here, you're going to be able to still get insurance through me, meaning the business. And it's a sad day when we start to rely on handouts. So I absolutely want to see Medicaid continue, 100% for those for whom it was intended. And then the working poor was supposed to be the expansion. Let's get everybody else off, and we're anticipating we'll see the results of that this upcoming year.
Thank you. Mr. Cook.
I have to go back to what I've originally said about a lot of these things. This was efficient and this was well run. I think these cuts to Medicaid are going to be negligent, and I think we're going to have a domino effect. I see it on the streets every day. There are a couple of examples. So what will happen is you'll have people with chronic illnesses that because their Medicaid's has gotten cut, they don't feel comfortable going to the doctor because it costs an astronomical amount of money. So they wait and they wait and they wait. And then when they kind of fall over the edge, then they call us. So then we got to take them, and we have to do a bunch of work. And then they go to the hospital, and what could have been an ER visit or a doctor visit ends up in the ICU. And then what happens? IRMIC's not generating revenue, or community hospitals not generating revenue because they have to write it off. So what happens is we have a tax domino effect. People aren't going to get the help that they need. People aren't going to be as healthy that have chronic issues, and it's going to cost us money. With mental health, what you'll see is you'll see a vortex. You'll see people that had access and resources to aid them in their mental health, and then what will happen? They're going to end up in the jails, or they're going to end up in the ERs. It's going to tie up law enforcement. If they're in the jail, it's going to cost us more money to the county level, because I don't really think the jail should be the tip of the spear as far as mental health, but that's just certain realities. Since Medicaid has gotten cut, the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office has doubled their amount of protective custody holds since December of last year. There's all of these small warning signs that we need to pay attention to, and this is one thing where I think our legislatures are not engaging in stakeholders and they're not listening. The data is there. The more we continue to cut Medicaid, the more it will cost us in the long run.
Mr. Cook, do you believe current state funding levels are adequate for education, or is the state underfunding or overfunding public education?
Once again, I have to go back to my continual theme. Education was efficiently run. My issue with funding education is why, when I graduated in high school in 2010, were we the last in the state, last in the country, as far as funding, and why 15 or however many long years I've been out of school, why are we still last? Why are we still celebrating a break-even policy for education? I think education is our future. It's our competition in the future, and it's our opportunity to build a more robust economy, to make our students smarter, to make them more well-rounded. Yet we continue to nickel and dime education. I think it needs to be funded. I think it needs to be tactically funded. We need to be smart with our money. But I don't understand why a state as great and dynamic and independent as ours is consistently, year after year, last in education. I think it's a misstep. We have to look to the future sometimes, and this is one of those things where our future is in classrooms with classes that are overfilled with kids. Why is Skyline High School full of mold? Why are we teaching kids in janitor closets at Idaho Falls High School? These are certain realities, and these are certain realities we need to face. I think it takes collaboration. It takes working with local control. It takes tactical decision-making at the state level, and I don't feel like we're doing that. And to quote the superintendent of schools, it's time we leave education alone, and it's time we fund it, and it's time we make it competitive.
Ms. Ehart?
Boy, since Governor Little has been in, there's been a 70% increase to the funding of schools and teachers and programs, and we have to recognize this. Just a couple years ago, I stood with Governor Little and my fellow legislators as a $48 million check had been presented as a means for this district to be able to draw on to fix things such as Skyline High School. I did double check that money hasn't been touched. So it is there, the money's been put there. We've put together school facility funding over the course of 10 years. $2 billion are going to be there so that we can draw on that in order to build schools. Because you know what, when things are tight and things are tight for families, it's hard probably for families to make that decision that I want to increase my property taxes. I like the fact I stood with probably most of my colleagues when we supported the insurance benefits for our teachers. I have stood there and in absolutely agreeing that our teachers needed funding. I believe that I supported the increase for the minimum the beginning teacher wage at $47,000, 47 something. All of these things are something that I absolutely support. I do believe, though, one of the areas that we can point to that's a little bit frustrating for me is I look at the bureaucracy at the top, and both in districts and other places, and there's a heck of a lot of admin. And as you see the population of the students like this, admin is growing like that, and that's one place where we can also the teachers should have that, not the admin.
Thank you, Ms. Ehart. What do you believe is the state's responsibility in funding and maintaining water for eastern Idaho?
I do believe, did you say, do I believe?
Yeah, what do you believe is the state's responsibility to maintain and fund water for eastern Idaho?
Oh, I absolutely do believe that. And as Eastern Idaho colleagues, we have all stood together strongly with that, certainly supporting the $30 million last year that was passed. And I know it was already mentioned in pointing to Senator Cook, who's been trying to head up this idea of what else might we do, how might we at least start the process, because it'd be so far down the line in looking at things such as, possibly the Teton Dam. But we all know that if we don't support the water, I mean, we can see what's happening. It didn't snow. We're not going to have the runoff. The loss, the impact to southeastern Idaho is not just limited to southeastern Idaho, and that's part of our argument even to the state. The impact to the state is southeastern Idaho is not supported and sustained with water will be felt throughout the entire state, and make no qualms about that. So not only do we need to not only do I think the state needs to stay engaged and involved with that, I think there are a couple other things too that we can look. I know in answering the questionnaire that your organization sent out, one of the things that is a little bit of concern, for example, is the water judge we have is in Twin Falls, and Twin Falls elects him. I think we need to look to expand, so we maybe have 3 water judges, or we do something where it's not just answering to Twin Falls, for example.
Thank you. Mr. Cook?
Yeah, so obviously the area that we live in, water is probably one of the biggest natural resources that we really need to focus on. Unfortunately, I can't control the weather, and I can't control the wintertime. And if I could, I would certainly make it like Scottsdale, because I hate snow. I freeze all the time. I've lost a little bit of weight in this process, so I get cold instantaneously. I think it comes down, we have to focus on the Snake River Aquifer, and we have to focus on recharge, absolutely. And once again, I think it comes back to having dynamic partnerships, and the state absolutely has a responsibility because water is the lifeblood of ag, and we are an agricultural community. So absolutely the state should be involved, but I think the state should also be engaging with agriculture. They should be engaging with the dairymen. We should be working on recharge options so the Snake River Aquifer can become solvent. We're losing water, and as much as I hate to admit, we could use some snow, we could use a little rain, but it also takes a team coming together to come up with a good idea and come up with a collaborative solution.
Thank you. Well, it's now time for your closing statements. Mr. Cook, if you'd like to begin.
Oh, I gotta go first? Okay. Can I read off the thing, Nate?
You can read off whatever you want.
So first of all, I just want to say thanks for your time once again, and thanks for coming out. I am not a big one on prepared words, but my dad always said if you're going to say something, I feel like people should feel something. The Idaho that I want, we're at a crossroads as a state, and a true battle is being unfolded in front of us. A battle for the heart and soul of our state versus authoritarianism. A battle for true freedom or a ruse of freedom fed to you by freedom scorers, freedom foundations that are stripping away our autonomy, legislative year after legislative year. I want an Idaho where my stepson's education is free of mandatory minutes of silence that we can't even articulate why it was enacted. I want him to have educators that feel empowered to challenge him to learn and grow, where his education is highly funded, rapidly evolving, and rapidly expanding. I want an Idaho where we are quelling the rising tide of narcotics because we're performing drug interdiction on our streets and highways, where our streets are safe from drunk drivers because we can hire, train, and most importantly, retain law enforcement in our area. I want an Idaho where we make wise financial decisions, where we don't compromise and hinder our government to the point of ineffective under the ruse of freedom. I want an Idaho where it's safe to still be neighbors with someone who might think a little different from you. I want an Idaho where we work together in the name of freedom versus apart under the ruse of freedom. I am you, District 33. I am Idaho, and I am asking you to bring back heart and soul to this state. I love you. I hear you. I see you, and I appreciate you. Help take back our state and put someone who cares in the driver's seat. Only you can make the change, and only you can make the difference, and I'm asking you to make that change. Take that step and vote with me for you on May 19th.
Thank you. Ms. Ehart.
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you, and thank you for showing up. It has, again, been such an honor and pleasure to be able to serve. When I think, again, what Idaho means to me, having been born and raised here, I want to see Idaho continue as it was, a free, independent state. And when we're in Boise and we see the kids come out and protest, and when these kids in school are advocating for socialism and communism, we've done something wrong. We need to make sure that we get back, which is part of why I love the 1336, to get back to teaching American civics, the love of this country, the love of the foundational principles that have long endured, that are the principles that will allow us to continue to be strong. They're Republican principles. Republican principle, this is the office for which I'm seeking, a Republican office, and I believe there's a dichotomy there. I want to see Republican principles taught. I want to see love of country taught. I want to see our kids get back to being able to be critical thinkers, to be focused on the areas that will most prepare them to go out into the workplace, not have to already be in the workplace, but to be able to go out and be not just productive citizens as far as how we think of just having a job, but to better Idaho, to be part of that generation that makes Idaho better than what was left to them. That's what I want to see, and that means that these are principles, strong families, constitutional principles, and just where we can once again get to the point where civility comes back. It's been so disheartening to see what's happening to our community. We've got to get back to the point where civility matters and where we can disagree without making it disagreeable. These things are incredibly important to me. I have stood there strongly for you, and I will hope you'll continue to stand strongly for me. Thank you so much, Nate, and thank you, Connor.
Thank you. Round of applause for Barbara Ehart and
Was that
Connor
pretty
Cook.
good? Okay, all right.
He said, "Give me 5, Coach." All right, we have. We're not quite done yet. Just give me one more minute. These are your candidates for 33A: Barbara Ehart, Connor Cook. We want to thank Compass Academy for hosting us tonight. For our student timekeepers, each of the candidates have been sent questionnaires that Barbara mentioned earlier that will be posted on East Idaho News, so you can check those out in the coming weeks. You can also stick around and talk with all of the candidates after. Thank you all for watching. Have a good night.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Contrast from this morning, huh?
Oh, my goodness.